Good evening. Hello, developers. Hey. My name is Evgeny Shvarov. I'm InterSystems Developer Community Manager. I'm very happy to see you here in InterSystems Developers Meetup. Yeah, and actually I'm glad to present you a our first speaker, famous Eduard Lebedyuk, the author of Python Gateway and also a lot of different packages and libraries you can find on InterSystems community and Open Exchange. Eduard, please present yourself also.
Hello. Hi everyone, I'm Eduard Lebedyuk from InterSystems. I'm a sales engineer. So about a month ago, Evgeny asked me to deliver a presentation about something on developers Meetup, and I said yes. And today, I decided to start doing the presentation at 3 o'clock in the morning. So if I would meet Evgeny, I could say, yeah, I finished presentation right before I went to sleep. Yeah, we don't have that much slides. It may mostly be the demo. It's just a coincidence. Anyway, what's on our agenda today? I'll talk about Python Gateway, what it is, what it can do for you. We'll talk about its architecture, about interoperability offerings, and I'll show you a live demo. Python Gateway is a bridge between Python and InterSystems IRIS, and it's unlike IRIS native for Python is mainly moves from InterSystems IRIS side. It's a community-based project, so it's community supported. But it also, several of sites are running it in production mode. It's available on Windows, Mac, Linux, and Docker, so pretty much everywhere. And here's how it looks like. We have Python C API, which we use to offer you an ObjectScript API, which I would be demoing later, and interoperability adapter, so you can use it in your interoperability business processes. We have InterSystems IRIS, Python on top of that, and most important for the libraries, we have Pandas, Clone, TensorFlow, NumPy. Who heard of TensorFlow? Raise your hands. Hey, I see a lot of hands here. Great. Matplotlib and many, many others. So, to work with Python from business processes, it turned out when we started this project, we thought it would be a lot of things to do. But turns out 4 or 6 is enough, and you actually really need like 2, 3 of them. You can load the data inside of Python. You can get the data back. You can execute arbitrary code. There is an error management, and you can persist and restore the context to and from IRIS. So, and with that, let's move to the demo part. It's the hardest part. I was asking for the clip-on mic so I, could type and speak. But now I only have one hand, so it probably go a little slower. But don't worry. So here's the terminal. Let's start with a new one. Yeah, we have a terminal. And we can enter Python interpreter as simple as typing ZPy. We set some variable. And now it's instead of an IRIS terminal, it's a Python terminal. We can import libraries. It also works. And call their methods. It's a random integer from 1 to 100. We get a new one each time. If you, for example, want to work with ObjectScript, you can do that too. So we can import the model random, and using a gateway, we make it a Python class. Check this out. So beforehand, we called random as a Python object, but now we imported it inside IRIS, and we create a dynamic object, which is a wrapper of a Python object, and call this method as an ObjectScript. That's also supported. We can also do something like this. We can define our own functions. It will take me a while to code it, like, let's say, cube function, and y, yeah, 3 times, right? And now this works. Oh, right, I should. Yeah, it's absolutely correct. You get error management and y is not defined. And now I'm passing 4. What should I receive in the output? Right, 64. Thank you. Okay. Next. That's what you get right from ObjectScript. So you can work as an interpreter, you can work as an ObjectScript classes, you can just call Python methods, execute functions, get variables, pass data back and inside. But most interesting of all is interoperability adapter. Here's how business process leveraging Python can look like. We import some libraries, transfer the data, we can do it in parallel, do some Python stuff, build the model, and draw the outputs. If you are familiar with Jupyter Notebook, we also support that recently. So the same process you can see as a Jupyter Notebook. Right? Here it is. The first activity, import pandas, and we have a import sys there somehow, which we don't need, so we erase that, save the process, and reload here, and you see that it's all saved. You can browse your process from Jupyter Notebook, and you can edit them. Now let's try running them. That's the most interesting part. Actions, test, answer request. Oh, it's done. It's fairly fast. So you see, with IRIS interoperability, you have full control over what's happening. We see what we send into a Python operation to execute, and here's we are sending the data. You don't need to bother with drivers, with connectors. You just write your query, or we support several modes like query, table, global, class for different use cases. Here's the query one. And you receive a data frame ready to go. Here's another function where we are receiving the variable value as a JSON. So it's the data translation in the other side. So from the Python we want to receive a correlation matrix variable. And here it is. We can receive many variables all at the same time. It allows us to, for us, Python processes are not a black box, which we are not understanding what's inside of this. We have complete control over it. We can check what's inside, get data there and back again, change it in IRIS and send there again. All we need for our data science needs. Yeah. We're building some images, some graphs. Okay, something else is persistence. You have this context, but it's in memory. And let's say you build your model and you want to save it, but you don't want to bother with figuring how to persist it, and we have it automatically. First of all, we can display context, display what's inside our Python part. As you can see, it's a list of all functions, models, and variables which you defined or we defined. Yeah, now we can save it as an IRIS object, well, several IRIS objects actually. Let's see the ID of our context object. 5. And now I open another terminal, and if I try to call cube function here, which we just defined, I would receive an error. There is no function cube in this process because it's a different process. Now I'm doing restoring the context with ID 5, which I just saved in this terminal. And let's try it again with cube 5, and I receive 125. Thank you. Okay, so if you that's a small part of what we are actually offering. There is many more other functions, but I'm just showing you the main ones: the persistence, the interoperability, the Jupyter support, the basic support, interpreter, all the basic stuff. Now, if you want to try it out yourself, hopefully you would, you have these links. For Python Gateway, we have the same for R, about the same. So you can download these projects, you can install them and work. And they work as is. We also have a private GitHub repository for user collaboration, where we are offering some more real-life pre-built models. Write us an email at mltoolkit@intersystems.com to get access. And I think, yes, we're 15 minutes. We have 5 more minutes for questions, if you have any.
Thanks, Edward. Colleagues, dear developers, do you have questions? I think the most youngest participant of our meetup has some questions. And maybe you, are there any Python developers here? Could you raise your hand? You see, you have a power of IRIS with Python combined with InterSystems IRIS if you leverage Python Gateway. So, do you have a question? Yeah? Okay, we have a question.
Hi, Edward, are there any limitations in terms of what Python libraries I can use as part of my Python Gateway solutions?
There's absolutely no limitations. I'm happy to say that you can use any Python library wherever it is.
So machine learning, NumPy, and so on would just work out of the box?
Right.
Excellent.
And I have a question. Is it a Python 3 or Python 2?
Python 3.
Okay.
We're keeping up with the times.
Thank you. Is there any restriction on what version of cache can support, or is it going to work with all version of cache?
It would work with Cache, Ensemble, Health Share, and InterSystems IRIS.
Okay. So in my company, our system is still running on cache 5.0.
Well, I'll be honest with you, I have not tested it on Cache 5.0.
Okay.
But on the more recent Cache versions, yes, it does work.
Oh,
You
okay.
can try it out and write to us back.
Thank you.
It works the same way with R?
There is a certain difference in implementations due to different languages.
Yeah, but
But it's most
the same way.
Yes, it works the same. There is an interoperability adapter to execute the code, to easily pass and receive the data, and so on. Yes.
have some lags when you load some big data. Which one is better?
It depends on your specific use case, and it depends on your experience with Python or with R, and on the size of the data set. It can be, you know, like if you have something less than a few terabytes, you use Python, and if more, you use R. There are more considerations. It's a very interesting question, really, but let's discuss it like more case-specific way.
Okay, when I start to use, I let you know.
Sure.
Okay, any more questions? So actually you can catch Eduard and ask your questions and give him some beer, so he'll share you with some experience. Okay, thank you, Eduard.
I'm Dmitry Maslennikov, moderator from developer community. I actually have two presentations for this evening, and it has to be VSCode ObjectScript, some demo, and presentation about how your code matters, about tools which you should use for to improve your code development cycle. Which one would you like to see first? VSCode or how your code matters? Any hands? So, for VSCode.
VSCode.
Okay, let's show VSCode. So, VSCode, ObjectScript. So you can see here pretty well looking ObjectScript code. We already have hover help, some small documentation when you hover over commands, or we don't have here functions. Well, let's go here. Very readable, old school code. But you can see here functions with documentations, with link to online documentation. So it will help a bit to read this piece of interesting code. We have already formatting. I'll try to press it with my. Okay. Yeah, it's it. Yeah. By one hotkey, it can make it a bit more readable from short commands, from short functions to long. Not everything very well now yet, but we are working on it. Yeah. Then we, of course, can go to any definition of any class, property, methods, or so on in code. Like here, it also supports hovering on macros, if I will find. Yeah, okay, macros. It can show you what's hidden there in macros. You can also go to definition of these macros. Yeah. So you can find it, read it. Okay, next, what next? We have a lot of features, yeah. We have also debugging. Debugging, I can show it. Debugging by class, and it shows you breakpoint code in CLS, so you can go by your CLS code, by your class code, and see variables. You can execute some expressions like $ZV here in watch view, as well as in debug console. Just here, I have a variable, I have value, I can put here $ZV, and it also works here. Pretty well. And
Can you increase the font?
oh,
Can you increase the font size?
increase font size. Yeah, sure. It's font zoom out. Oh no, in. Or maybe this way. No. Yeah, cool. Okay, cool. And it can also show value when you hover it. Let's hover it. Let's show. Not shown. But it should show. It's okay. Yeah. I already have debugging for classes, debugging for routines. You can attach to running process. It's quite simple, should be. Yeah, it shows your processes which you can choose to attach and debug, but I don't have best processes to attach, so I can demonstrate it yet. But also, yeah, of course I have IntelliSense. So when you starting to write type commands, it just shows you full command with short documentation. You can choose it. You can use class, and it will show you list of packages, so you can choose class, so on. Let's go to page maybe, and class methods for this class as well. It supports for matrices IntelliSense, so very easy. Of course, for functions as well, or system variables as well. So formatting also help you not just convert your old style code from short commands, short functions. It also fix your indentation. Like if I would block it kind of like this, when I push it out of format, it'll just fix to be, so it looks better, very beautiful. And it working also with this kind of, with bases as well. So it can fix here as well. What else? No. So what's important in this VSCode ObjectScript extension, open source, completely for free. You just install it, connect to IRIS cache, and use it. It working with Atelier API. It uses completely only Atelier API for debugging, for anything, for macros, for everything. It uses only Atelier API. So you just need version which supports Atelier, and you can use it. So Atelier working with 16 version and VSCode ObjectScript, yeah, from 16 version. Yeah. We also have Explorer. So you can look at code on the server. It shows your code from your namespace, configured namespace, but you can also show, look at code on another namespace. I have only %cs here. Just recently also added support to edit code directly on server. Yeah, you can see here, I just opened it person class and I can edit it. I just don't want to block it, but yeah, it's not good one. But yeah, you can edit it directly on server. You don't need to have local sources. It's very good for some projects where you still have source code in XML. Like I have one project where we have XML in source control system. So kind of like this, I have these XML files controlled by our Git and stored on GitHub, but with Visual Studio Code and support of multi-root workspace, I can add more folders. One of them is virtual file system, which connects me directly to server, and I can see content of server right here in Explorer view, edit it, and get changes in my XML files, which I going to store in my GitHub. It uses source control class, which used by Studio as well. So if you store XML files in your Git still and use source control class, you can use VS Code as well. Or if you have more features, more functionality on your source control class in Studio, it still will work here as well. And so I edited address template class, and in my Git, it goes here as XML. So it will not appear class as UDL, it's appear here as XML. Kind of like this. Yeah, I actually have a lot, yeah. Maybe I forgot something, but yeah. A lot of features goes from VS Code itself. So this makes it better than Studio, than Atelier. VS Code growing very fast. They have releases each month, so they are doing more features every month, and it's very cool. I use it already for many last months. I don't work with Studio anymore, and yeah, it's very cool. I think this is enough, maybe. But we're adding more features. Any questions? Yeah, cool.
Thank you, Dmitry. We have questions. Okay, so who comes? Okay, Kuro.
Hi. One question. What about the BPL or DTL classes? There is a graphic, I think so.
Yeah, currently it's just mostly only plain ObjectScript, just only ObjectScript classes, routines, not any this stuff, not ensemble, not deep C yet, but we will add it. Yeah.
Yeah, so we depends also the portal to create this kind of the objects, and the rest using the VS Studio to complete all the application, right? I mean, sometimes if I need to create a BPL, it's a diagram with all the code. But the Visual Studio it doesn't support this graphical.
It supports. We can include any web view inside of VS Code. It's possible. It's possible to do it with even with this ensemble or deep C interface inside of VS Code. But just we need some time to implement it. Yeah, but we can do it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I have a small question. You said you use the Studio source control classes and things like that. Is it possible to go completely around the Studio source control and use UDL in a Git repository without having to use all the...
Actually, this stuff with source control class goes from API Atelier. It's not mine. I use just only what we have already in Atelier API. I did nothing for IRIS side, for cache side. So it goes from API Atelier. So if you configure in this namespace source control class, it will use. I don't know if it can be switched off just for VS Code. But maybe with InterSystems we will manage it somehow.
Okay, but does that mean that if I start your Visual Studio Code editor and I have does it download all the files to my file system?
It's not all files, only when you request it. Just it requests list of classes, but when you open it, yeah, it downloads content, but not for whole classes.
Okay.
Not for whole amount of classes.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions for Dmitry's VS Code ObjectScript plugin? So thank you, Dmitry. Thank you for a great demo. And you can ask for Dmitry for a private demo if you want. So, I mean, please. Thank you. Okay. And the next presenter is Evgeny Shvarov, so myself. And I will tell you about InterSystems Package Manager, which we announced 2 months ago. Okay. Next slide. Actually, what is that? Package Manager, also the shortcut is ZPM. So it's the thing which helps you to deploy. It's a package manager. Okay, so usually when you build a package and you also always see sort of instruction with that, like 12 steps of how to install it. Like you need to download it, then unzip it, import it into the system, and do some additional steps for setting up configuration. And finally, you get it, and okay, every time it's a long story, maybe dull. But actually, this is not what you want when you see the package which helps you to, in your development. What you want, it's a one line to make it work, and actually, maybe you don't even want maybe you just want to test it. You want to know how it works, Yes. So the long story short, you don't want these 12 steps. You want one line. And with ZPM, InterSystems ZPM, you can make it. So it just literally helps you to change these 12 steps of crazy story to one line, one perfect line, like install the package. Yeah, and just to make it happen, what do you need? You need to download it from Open Exchange and import into your IRIS system this package. And after that, you will be able to install any packages in one line from InterSystems repository, from community repository of ZPM. Okay. Actually, how it works. Once you install the ZPM client on InterSystems IRIS, you will be able to call this install package name, and here will be the request to remote ZPM repository. And as an answer to this request, ZPM, you will get an archive of package, which will be unzipped into your IRIS system internally, and will be installed, including all the dependencies. And actually, you may be curious, what the systems could this be? Like, what are the packages? The packages could be server-side ObjectScript classes, and it could be web applications with no classes at all, or it could be like a full stack application with server sides and front-end stuff. Okay. And what we have now, it's a live demo. Maybe you want to see it in action. Okay, and Semyon will help. Semyon will do the whole demo. We are so brave to show you everything from scratch. So pretend you don't have anything on your laptop. So anything. I mean, but at least you have a browser, right? Yeah. Okay. And we go to yes. We open Exchange. And we have a wonderful application here, which is named GitHub template. Yes, with the GitHub template, you are able to create your own application, your own repository with just one button, which gives you the full environment for coding with the Docker, with InterSystems IRIS in a Docker container. So we don't need to install anything, but we need to have a browser and Docker now. Okay. So we take the LAN for cloning this, and we git cloning this repository. Great. So we have it. Internet works. Yeah. Okay. Fine. What is the folder, right? Okay, we can fix it like that. So I mean, it's my laptop, sorry. That's why. Okay, we can do it again. Okay. Okay. It will be there. Okay, git clone. Okay. And open in VSCode. Yes, this folder with a new window. Okay. Open folder. In GitHub, yeah. Okay, we open this cloned repository in Visual Studio Code. Yes, and what we have here, here we have Docker files. Actually, this is a template of very simple InterSystems IRIS application where I have several Docker files, and one of Docker files contains the necessary lines which downloads ZPM client and installs into container while it builds. So, Semyon, could you please build the Docker container with this? Yeah. Okay. VSCode has a nice extension to support Docker. So you can, if you have the Docker compose file, you just can right-click it, and yes, we need to shut down the current. Oh, maybe we could just shut it down. Okay. Fine. So we have a working build and build it container here. And next we can open a terminal into this container. Yes, so we are inside IRIS now. And here, as we saw, we have a ZPM already installed inside, so we can call ZPM. Yes, it's here. It's here. And now we can install anything we have here. What are the models we have here? Okay, great. We have not very much, but we have only 2 months running, and there are several repositories here. And let's install some, for example, web terminal package, which is known as the third most popular in ObjectScript InterSystems IRIS application on OpenExchange to the moment. And it's a full stack application, so it has web front-end part, it has some ObjectScript classes, and we install it just with these 2 words, like install web terminal, done. So it's installed. So let's see if it works. Oh, you can go log in, yeah. So yeah, we have a working web terminal, right? So could we call some method? Yeah, web terminal is a nice tool. It recognizes all the ObjectScript classes you have in the namespace. Yeah, just like the usual terminal, but with some tweaks. Okay, thank you, Semyon. So we demonstrated to you how package manager works. Could you please go back to slides? Okay, I have some disclaimer here. So package manager is not InterSystems supported project. It's community supported project. So use it on your own at your own risk, please. But this also means that you can contribute to it. So currently we open source the client, but in a few months we will open source the server as well. But client you can find on OpenExchange and GitHub. So and the current features of ZPM are, so you can list what are the packages available. So you can install packages. Packages could be installed with dependencies. Yep. And you can install packages as well. So, and if you need some more functionality, please contribute. We have a large community, 6,000 members. So, okay. And yes, what would be maybe interesting for you? So you may ask me, okay, how can I submit my package there? So this is easy. So you just need to install it, to install the client, and then introduce into your repository a module XML file, which literally describes what your package is. What are the ObjectScript parts, what are the web front-end parts, and maybe what are the special instructions how to deploy it, and what are the dependencies. And you can test it with the command load and put in the path to the source on your laptop. And the result of this command will show you if the model XML is accurate about your repository. And so after that, you can request to publish this repository via Open Exchange. So you submit your solution on Open Exchange. You put the name of your package. And today it's a manual process. So if we approve your package, we will publish your package. If model, of course, if model XML exists and it's accurate. Yet, but in a few, I want to say weeks. Okay, in a few months, there will be a continuous integration procedure. So hopefully, so this will not be manual process with updating and submitting packages. It will be upon if it is approved on Open Exchange. So this means that will be published on community repository. So. And this was okay. So this is it. Thank you for your attention. Do you have any questions? Okay, we have a question. We had two mics. Okay, here is this. Turn it on.
Yeah, I can imagine if this gets popular, you might have naming conflicts or collisions. How are you dealing with naming? Can you have a namespace convention? Like com.intersystems.name?
Raj, thank you. This is a very good question. Actually, we're working on this. Yes, and this is very important. And yes, we will definitely have published naming conventions. Thank you. Any more questions? So I think I'm waiting for your packages to be published on Package Manager, and thank you. I'm happy to answer your questions privately in person. And actually now it is a coffee break, so break for 15 minutes for everything. So let's do some, take some beer, okay? Okay, we continue with our meetup, and the next presenter is John Murray. So John, please introduce yourself. Maybe everybody knows you, right? Okay, John.
Hi, thank you, Evgeny. I'm John Murray. I work for George James Software, and we're based in London in the UK. And I've got an opportunity to share a few experiences, a few things with you this evening. So when Evgeny was asking who would like to talk at Meetup, I said I'll do a slot. Title I chose was Falling in Love with Visual Studio Code. I don't want this just to be solely a marketing pitch. I want to talk about what difference this makes for us as developers. And we only have a limited amount of time and not a great environment for technical stuff, but we'll see what we can do. So some of you may have seen the demo I did this morning during a keynote session when I was using Visual Studio Code with our Syrengy editor and debugger to debug a REST service call. And part of what I used then was another extension within VS Code. One of the things I really like about VS Code is how extensible it is, how easily it's possible to build new things into it or to find other things that other people have built and plug them in. So when I knew I wanted to do this kind of demo, I found that there's a great extension called REST Client, which I add REST client into my VS Code environment, and REST client starts doing things for me. So where I am at the moment is I've got REST client installed but not enabled on this workspace. I've got Syrengy installed but not enabled. And it gives me a chance to show you the kind of way that VS Code lets modules start doing new things with what you've got there. So the file that I've got open here is called, it's just a text file on my disk. It's called demoharness.rest. And by default, VS Code says, well, that's a plain text file. And sure enough, it just looks like that. Even with plain text file, VS Code will provide a little bit of code folding based on indent. So I can collapse down one line of this because it's slightly indented. When I go into VS Code and say, let's go and see what extensions I've got that are disabled in here, and in there we'll find REST client, I'm going to enable REST client. And if you watch what happens over there, on the right-hand side, when REST client is enabled, REST client says, I know what to do with files with a .rest extension. And so down in the corner here, it's now saying this isn't plain text, this is HTTP. And moreover, it's done some coloring for us, but most interesting, it's put in this sort of active button between line 3 and line 4. And that's the basis of being able to launch a facility within REST client to submit the REST request in the following paragraph to wherever you've said it should go, and then the response comes back in the second window. So I click on the send request. The request goes to the IRIS server that's being targeted on 57981. Back comes the response, nicely formatted in there. So that's great for just doing the REST testing, and then I said, well, what I want to do is be able to debug that server side. So by building into our Syrengy extension, the knowledge about what it will do when it finds a .rest file that's been treated as an HTTP language by REST client. When you enable our extension, we put another gadget in here, and now we have two different things we can do with it. This one is being served by REST client, and this one is being served by Syrengy. And when I have the Syrengy do the serve on this one, I'll just close out the, it's going to flip over to debug mode here. So when I say debug with Syrengy, that submits the REST request, but in a mode that says to the server-side IRIS process, talk to Syrengy, give Syrengy control over this, and now we are executing at almost the first bit of int code that goes on in the server. I say almost the first bit because actually the first bit is a dispatcher that says, what was your request, which class method is going to do it? And really that's not very interesting if you're debugging because it's just a dispatcher. So the Syrengy extension gives you the ability to say that there are certain modules within the code that you don't care about, and let's just skip right over them. Even though you've got the source code for them, you're not really going to be interested in stopping there. So we've got those kind of capabilities. And as you saw with, earlier with Dmitry's, we're now in the situation where we're using the standard debug capabilities within VS Code. So we're already using quite a lot of them, and over time we'll add in making use of more of them. Another reason I really like VS Code is that it's a very dynamic project, and so the things that we're doing in the debugger today, we wouldn't have been able to do in the debugger in VS Code a few months ago because new features are being added in. It's basically on a monthly release cycle. They're very upfront about what's going on, and it's possible to run what's called the insiders build of VS Code, which gets built pretty much every weeknight, and gives you an opportunity of trying out what will be coming in the next release. So they run quite happily side by side. So in my dark mode here, I'm running the standard release, and if I fire up the insiders release here, just to keep my own sanity, I change that to run one of the light mode themes. But here I'm trying features which in a few weeks' time will drop into the standard release. Yeah, so that extensibility is really quite useful. I've turned on the Syrengy extension and the REST client one, and there's another little extension I built mainly just as a practice exercise. I created this extension called the folding stuff, because VS Code has the ability to do code folding, but it doesn't have a context menu that lets you do it. There are lots of keystrokes and commands for doing it, but when I'm reading code, and you can also click in the margins here, but when I'm halfway down a large method, I might say I just want to collapse this, and instead of going up to the top or remembering what the keystrokes are, I thought, well, let's just give myself a command here. So we've got the ability. I think I probably have to do a reload on this for. Did I re-enable it? I need to enable it for the workspace. So I enable the folding stuff, and now my context menu has got 3 commands that I added to the menu: fold all block comments, or unfold all. Fold all is quite handy because it lets you take your code, collapse it down, see the very top level view of it, and then drill your way into it. So those are some of my experiences so far with building things with VS Code, extensions like that. One of our challenges has been getting people to try it out, start using it. And in advance of this event, I invested the time in getting familiar with a service called Gitpod, which allows me to build Docker container that will get spun up on demand. And I've built that based on a IRIS Community Edition image. As it fires up, it may take a little while here, but it produces us a machine running in the cloud on a Kubernetes pod, basically. In that machine, we've got an instance of IRIS Community Edition. We've also got an instance of Visual Studio Code. And so when the machine's launched up here, you'll be able to go to an X desktop emulator within your web browser, right-click on that, say, fire at VS Code, and then you've got VS Code running on what looks like your desktop, but actually it's out there in the cloud. It's coming through onto your web browser. And when you've had enough of it, you can just stop the machine. So that's a way of getting people starting to use it. It's not aimed for serious development at this stage, but it's a way of saying, here, you can go and try it. It does, as I say, it takes a while to start up, so it may be that we won't get to the final state on it before I run out of time on this. One of the other things, of course, we're known for as George James Software is source code management, and VS Code has an extensibility model for source code providers within it. So we are about to release another extension which makes VS Code able to collaborate with our source code product, Deltangy, and then you'll get the fully integrated experience. As you edit code, it can be source controlled with Deltangy. Of course, there are many people who don't use Deltangy, but we've decided we'll bundle a solo edition, free solo edition of Deltangi with Syrengy, such that when you install Syrengy in an IRIS or Cache or Ensemble instance, if you choose to, you can say, I'd like to bring this namespace under source control. And it's only with the free edition of Deltangi, it's a very rudimentary check out, check in kind of model, but it does provide you with versioning. And even if you're just on your own machine and doing your own development, the opportunity of saying, I have a record of what it looked like last time it worked, I still find valuable, even if it's only me working on the project. Of course, we know we're not going to change the world and get everybody using Deltangi for their source control. Most people would like to use Git for the source control. And we are a long way down the path of having a way of basically having our Syrengy integration with IRIS and Cache and Ensemble, have it available to the Git client on the machine in the native way within Visual Studio Code, such that you can manage the code as though it's on your local machine, whereas in reality it's inside your execution environment. And some people think that's a really weird thing to want to do, but other people, particularly those who've been using this technology for a long time, know that there are very sound reasons for doing that, and don't really want to be dragged kicking and screaming in the direction of externalizing everything into 20,000 files. Okay? Any questions?
Thank you, John. Thank you. Any questions to John? Another VSCode plugin for development with InterSystems and data platforms. John, is it the question is it open?
No.
Mohit, please.
This is all open source?
No, ours isn't open source.
Actually, the majority of presented packages are open source, but yes, some of them are not. So thank you, John.
Yeah.
And I can say that you can, of course, ask John all the questions privately, and you can find his George James Syrengy VSCode plugin on OpenExchange and on georgejames.com, JS 2019. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
I'm happy to present next speaker, Anton Umnikov from InterSystems, Senior Cloud Solutions Architect. Anton, welcome. Please.
Okay. Thank you, Evgeny. What we're going to talk today is InterSystems, IRIS, and the cloud, with a big accent on and, as an opposite of in. We're not going to talk about how you deploy InterSystems IRIS or any other InterSystem technology in the cloud. Like, we're not going to talk about autoscaling on how many transactions per second InterSystems IRIS can do in the cloud. We will talk about how you, as IRIS developer, can benefit from all the features, all the services that cloud has to offer. Right? So, thank you, Evgeny, for introduction. Just to reiterate, my name is Anton Umnikov. I'm based in Toronto, Canada. I'm a senior cloud solution architect at InterSystems, and this alphabet soup you see at the third row, it means that I'm a certified solution architect and certified cloud engineer at AWS and at Google Cloud. So I kind of can pretend at least that I know what I'm talking about. So let's do that. Besides being able to run IRIS in the cloud, you can now use all the services that all the major public cloud providers has to offer right from within the IRIS. And we'll do a couple of these things today in just a few minutes. What you see here on the left is the list of services that, as of this morning, AWS offers in Northern Virginia. These services range from running your virtual machines, containers, Kubernetes clusters in the cloud, to very exotic things such as doing 3D rendering for your games, connecting to satellites, or managing call centers. Like, it's all a few clicks away for you to do very amazing stuff in the cloud. Right? We can do a couple of things today. We'll do machine learning in the cloud. Evgeny is trying to tell me something, I cannot hear him.
Do you need help with mic? Okay, fine.
Yeah. I hope I'll be good. I need to do some typing, but not too much typing. Right? We'll do machine learning in the cloud. If you've been to InterSystems Global Summit early this morning, you've already seen part of that demo. I wouldn't bother you with all the numbers and economics of running that in the cloud versus running that on-prem, but what I'll show you is how exactly it works, what code is being run, what is being provisioned underneath, what is the result of this machine learning being run in the cloud, and how you can utilize that. Then we'll do some very interesting stuff. We'll send SMS, short message, on the cell phone through the cloud, but we'll do that from IRIS. And finally, we'll read some data that is stored in S3 bucket as your SQL table in IRIS, right? And then we'll talk about how you can do these kind of things, what involved in security, what involved in access, what do you need to do in order to achieve these kind of results in your own application. So let's get started. Okay. Let's switch to the demo. Quickly, in the first demo I want to do is just send SMS to the cell phone. I hope I get it somewhere in the history here. Okay. Here we go. Anyone want to volunteer their own cell phone number and verify that message is really being sent? It would go to Australia. Hmm? Okay. Yeah. So don't go away. We'll need your phone very soon. Okay. One. Got it. So, as simple as that, right? If you look underneath, it's about 5 lines of code in cache ObjectScript. Or in ObjectScript, as we call it now. Right? It would use AWS SNS service, and one of the endpoints for SNS is SMS. And you can send this SMS to any cell phone, anywhere in the world. Into North America and most of the European countries is literally pennies. If you send in that to some exotic countries, you might get some extra costs, but you can even do that with free trial account on AWS, right? And I'll show you in a few minutes how exactly you can do this, right, from your own IRIS app. Now, you can, but you would not get the result in the setup I have. If you want the number from which you want to receive messages, you need to pay extra for your own registered number. You can even get a short number, but that costs a lot of money, right? But yes, you can not only send, but receive messages as well. If you want something free for the demo, you can reply, but you wouldn't get the message on your own account because they would be just reusing the big pool of outgoing numbers that they have. So another demo I want to show you is SageMaker demo that you've seen earlier today at the Global Summit. So let's do that. Half of my screen. Okay. Better? Yeah. So what you see here, right, is just the variable that contains configuration for my job that I'll be running in the cloud. Everything is actually so far happening on my local laptop. I'm working in the Docker container on my own laptop that contains Python gateway. Thanks, Eduard. That's really big enabler for everything we're doing here. Not everything, but a lot of things we're doing here today. So we have SQL query that is used to pull the data from IRIS on which we'll be training our model. Here is the instance that will be spinning up in the cloud that would be doing training. This instance is fairly simple. It doesn't have GPU, but you can provision up to 8 GPUs attached to the single instance. This instance would cost up to $30 an hour, but it would do your machine learning very, very, very fast, right? But for demo purposes, we're not doing that. And finally, some hyperparameters. Like I see Tom is nodding. He knows how big this hyperparameter string can actually be in real life, right? We're just doing demo. We're doing a very simple use case, but let's run this thing. Right, so what's happening right now, I'm using Python gateway to execute the Python code locally. And this Python code would spin up the instance in the AWS, provision all the resources required. It would run for a few minutes. And after these few minutes are over, you'll get the model back into IRIS. We'll parse this model, we generate PMML, we'll load this model, and at the end of the day, we'll run this model right within the IRIS, right within our system management portal. While this thing is running, I'll show you a couple of more things. Right, first of all, let's go to the browser and go to the SageMaker console. Here's the job that we just started from our IRIS instance, right? I didn't do much. On the IRIS side of things, all the heavy load is being executed in the cloud, right? But the result would be pulled, and we'll see that as soon as the training is done, right? Another thing I want to show you is I have the S3 bucket. I have plenty of them, but one of them is here, and I have some data that contains tables from the well-known TCP/H benchmark. This data sits in S3 bucket. S3 storage is way less expensive than the storage that you would use attached to your compute instances, right? So what we can do next is we can use this data as a storage for IRIS tables. Let's do that. Okay, I have some test scripts here. Let me copy a couple of them. So I'm connecting to my instance in the cloud, right? The next thing I'm doing is connecting to IRIS and going to SQL Shell, right? So looks very familiar. You probably did that 1,000 times. The next thing I'm doing is I'm executing a few commands that would create two tables and associate these tables with data in S3 bucket. So we wouldn't be using globals for this test. We'll be using data that actually sits in S3, right? I'm not downloading this data and loading it into the table before I do the query. I actually do that as we speak. I'm pulling, well, at the end of the day, I have to get all the data into my instance, but I'm not recreating this table. I'm doing that transparently, right? Query will be run at the IRIS level. More than that, that's full-featured table in IRIS without having any globals underneath. And this table you can join with any other table, which is native global-based table in IRIS, right? So you can picture a situation where you have like a deep archive with the data that you hope you don't need to touch anytime soon, but eventually you might need to query that. Or maybe you need to query this data once a month, right? You don't want this data to be Sergey, I have hard time hearing you. I'm afraid everyone else would be too.
So what if you have some weird features like bit-slice indices on your table? Can you still join them?
It's the table you get from S3 bucket is a regular table. From the lower level perspective, it has nothing but master index, master data map. So every request you do into this table would result in full table scan.
Okay.
Right. If you join it with any regular table, it would be able to utilize whatever indices are there in that table. Right. But at the end of the day, in essence, we're using standard AWS APIs to talk to our S3 buckets. We just expose that as a table in S3. So let's see what's going on in our other terminal window. Okay, so the model training is completed. Here we got billed for 38 seconds of AWS compute time. Actually, AWS is greedy. They say they have a per second billing, but per second billing starts from minute 1. So here I'm losing about, what, 22 seconds. Like they charge me, I'm losing probably half a penny here, right? Because they charged me for 22 seconds of compute time that I didn't use. But you got the idea. You can provision very heavy, very powerful instances and use them only for the time you actually need to run them to train your model. Now I can go to my management portal. And if I did everything right, then I would have this model already loaded. Here we go, SageMaker IRIS. I do have this model already exposed as PMML, so I can run any workload against it, right? The last few lines of code in this script is essentially the loading the PMML model that we just trained in the cloud. Right, so if I'll go there, I can hit test, and again, work in progress. Not everything works out of the box, but bear with me. Right, if we'll start typing the numbers, it eventually would give us that, hey, out of all 3 species of flowers, we are confident that it's species, the type of the flower number 3, right? This one, Benjamin, it's on you, right? But other than that, right, we started with data that sits in the table, in IRIS, right? We pushed the training in the cloud, and we can execute this model right away in the IRIS. So let's continue. How do you do this? Looks like magic, right? No, not really. So it's all based on well-documented, well-published APIs that you can use from IRIS or any other development environment for that matter. There are three major kinds of APIs that you can use. REST API. In fact, that's the lowest level API that you can use. Any environment that is capable of executing REST, including curl and bash shell, can do that, right? This part is really tricky. Like, we'll get to that. Authentication for this API is a pain in the rear, right? I would really stay away from this approach for as long as I could. But if that's your only choice, or if you're really striving for extreme performance, as we did with S3 base table, that's our only choice, right? But again, be ready that that part, authentication, is hard. Command line, right? Command line is a command line. You enter one line of code in your bash shell or PowerShell, you'll get the result. Authentication is built in. You enter your credentials once, it just works. SDK, bunch of languages supported out of the box. Again, they would use the same authentication framework as the command line, so you enter your credential once, it works. At the end of the day, all of these guys, they would use REST APIs underneath, right? So if you're thinking that by using REST APIs, you're losing something, the only thing you're losing is your time in here, trying to implement all this authentication business, right? From functionality perspective, you have everything you need. Another thing you'll probably be using, I can go into Google and figure out how do I get data from S3 in Python, right? I'll get answer right away. Or how do I run SageMaker instance? I'll get answer right away. In here, not that much information available. So, just a few examples. Getting the data from, getting the object from S3 bucket, right? One command in the command in the command line API. In Python, 3 lines of code. Very clear. You can tell me what's going on without knowing the Python at all, right? If you do in REST, the same thing is, looks fairly simple, but this part is very sophisticated, very complicated, right? You have to do multiple steps, you have to apply multiple encryption algorithms, signature algorithms, and so on. But if you figure out how to do that, it's all yours, right? You can use any API that for any service that cloud provider can offer. Now, to work with these APIs, you need permissions. Like, I don't want Sergey to mess with my own AWS account, right? I wouldn't give him permission to do that. But if I want to, what I need to do is to give Sergey the access keys, right? Access key ID, access key, yeah. This one is fake. They have example at the end, so don't try to get your cameras and spin the GPU instances to mine cryptocurrencies. It would not work. But if you happen to have working key pair from some account, this account is yours. Or actually, up to extent, the user who owns these keys have access to the account, right? I can issue very restrictive keys, but we all know that developers start with admin rights to everything, and then maybe, or maybe not, they kind of shrink down the rights to minimal required. But again, take care of this, right? Don't put them on the GitHub, don't put them anywhere where bad guys can start exploiting this, right? The easiest way to get these programmatic access keys is just create new user and say this user has programmatic access to your account, right? Then as part of user provisioning, you'll be offered to download this pair of keys. Sometimes if you want to give someone a temporary keys, there would be another part of the equation called token. right? How do you supply keys to the code, right? Never ever hard code the keys in your code. There are robots scanning GitHub, and if they see something that looks like the AWS code, be ready. Like someone would be mining cryptocurrencies on your account. Or hold your ransom for whatever intimate pictures you store in your S3 buckets. I just read a lot. So there are two ways you can supply the keys to the instance that is not hosted at AWS. One way is to use credentials, right? If you are configuring your command line tools for AWS, you use AWS configure, your credentials would end up in this file, right? In your home directory, you can edit this file with Nano or any other editor, and all the APIs, Python, Java, you name it, would be able to use it. Another way, use environment variables. And again, I can't repeat it enough. Don't put your keys in your source code. If you are working within AWS, there's way better way of doing things, right? You don't deal with keys at all. If you're working within AWS as part of AWS provisioning your AWS instance or container or Lambda function, anything that is capable of executing code, you supply identity and access management role. This role, in my case, has admin access to S3. So the instance that I use to show you the working with S3 bucket, it doesn't have any keys on the instance, right? It has the rights that associated with this role, and as soon as I associated the role with my instance, I can, within the instance, query this magic IP address, and it would give me a whole bunch of metadata about my instance, including the keys. And it would rotate keys every 6 or 8 hours, but your application would be able to use that instead of any keys that are physically stored on the instance. It's very safe if you change something in your role, right, or you decided to remove the role from the instance, right? At this instance, all the code that is relies on those keys would stop working, right? The keys would be returned and so on. So if you are hosting your instance inside AWS, that's the way to do that. I'm talking about AWS here, but again, Google and Microsoft would have the very same idea. Right, Google would give you a nice URL instead of cryptic IP address, but that's the main difference. Right, other than that, you still would be able to get the keys that associated with the permissions this instance has. Now, if you don't want to deal with keys at all, there's still a way of doing that. And that's how I sent SMS to our volunteer. The way it works is you can create Lambda function at AWS that does whatever you need it to do, right? And then expose this Lambda function as a service through API Gateway. In API Gateway, you can do whatever authentication you want. The authentication I used is a simple API key authentication. So all I need to supply to this endpoint is a cryptic header, but I'm not dealing with all this extra complicated, extra sophisticated AWS authentication. Right? So even if you don't deal with proper APIs, right, and doing some development in Lambda, you can still use that from within your code. But you sort of take in certain risks because you have to understand what you're doing. Right? But if you can do that, it's all yours. And again, in a summary, what I want to say, cloud is way more than just being able to run IRIS in the cloud. Cloud has wide variety of services that you can use to your advantage. So be curious, figure out what's there, right? Be lazy. Don't start to re-implement and reinvent every single wheel on the planet. Check out, maybe they do have a service for that, right? And if you're not happy with how the authentication or what have you works, right, maybe you can figure out the way to use existing SDKs and API, as I used Python gateway to spin up my SageMaker instance. The notable thing, it took me a while to figure out all the dependencies and the security configuration that would let me run Python code that connects to AWS. But after that, it was 5-minute exercise to just copy and paste code from Jupyter Notebook and run it from within IRIS without Jupyter Notebook itself. So the big advantage of having Python gateway is not even being able to use Python APIs, it's all the ecosystem that you have in Python that you can just copy and paste in your own project, right, and call it yours, right? And be safe, right? If you're dealing with AWS keys, API keys, make sure you don't expose them to bad guys. Like, don't put them on GitHub, don't show them on your presentations at Global Summit, as few guys tried to do, and I stopped them right before they did. So, be curious, be lazy, and be safe, and have fun in the cloud. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anton. This was very helpful. Okay, any questions? I like this "be lazy." Really great slogans. Thank you for this wisdom. Any questions to Anton? So,
Sergey, you had plenty of questions. Where are they now?
I run out.
He's lazy. He follows your
He's
advice.
impatient.
Yeah. Okay. So okay, you can maybe you're shy and you can ask all the questions in person to Anton. So please, you're welcome, and thank you, Anton, again.
Thank you.
Now we have Dmitry again. The presentation is how we code matters. Dmitry, please welcome.
So, again, I'm Dmitry Maslennikov. I am co-founder of company CaretDev, which is actually located here in Boston. I am developer advocate. So I'm going to today say about development a little bit, maybe more. We'll see. And I'm also moderator on the developer community, and as you see. So about current development state, it's a lot of projects who use InterSystems for many years, still working on one server with multiple developers. It's very, very horrible. You know, they don't use source control completely. Just everything on server. Why? They don't use tests at all. Any. Just without any tests. Code style guys. What is this? They don't know. Name conventions. Also. And they have such code. Yeah. Who even can read it? Anybody can say what's going on in this code. What is doing? It's really working code. It can do. It's just a clock. Just the clocks. There. I found it's in internet, in GitHub maybe. I don't know who's the author, but yeah, it's just the clocks. Trust me. I can show later if you would like how it's working. So my agenda will be about kind of DevOps lifecycle. Not all, just most important parts. And I'm going to start from plan, of course. And so I'm going to speak about tools which you can use to improve your development cycle. We have a lot of tools, not just only this. We have much more, but some of them just more popular. You can use any of these. In my team, we use like track and flowdog. Track for jobs, for tasks. Flowdog just to speak between developers, between your team. It can be Jira, it's most popular. It can be Trello, or even just GitHub for issues, for projects. So you can plan your project, what you're going to do there. GitLab, or maybe Microsoft Teams. I hate Microsoft, but why not? So I just going to put it here. Next, development. So it's also important to have right tools here. Source control. Everybody, every developer, every development team should use. It could be Git with any of system. GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket, any. But right developer, right editor also can help you in just coding, in development. Visual Studio Code, which I showed previously, very good, why not? Maybe if you would like, if you use other languages, you can use best IDE for your language in your team, if it's not ObjectScript. Docker, it's also part of development. I working with many projects now, and I use Docker everywhere. I can't start my new project without Docker. So it's also part. So we're adding new builds. Yeah. Just if it's just working on you and or on your machine, doesn't matter. You should build it and test it somewhere. So you can use different tools for your case. Just use any. Git just a part of, because source control, you just put it here. CI/CD from GitLab. It could be Travis, Circle CI. GitHub now also have OpenCI, GitHub Actions. Jenkins, if maybe you still use this old stuff. Docker, Kubernetes, yeah, it's now modern tools which can help you. ZPM, why not? It's also very powerful now. Yet we're working on it. It's a package manager. Recently I showed it was, yeah. Also could be part of. Yeah. Go next to tests. Tests, very important part. It's and important in tests that they should be used in CI/CD. Because if you have tests, it just means nothing, because they should be running on every push of your code to source control systems. So we still have CI here, but we also have tools which should be used here. JUnit is just unit tests, so just we should have unit tests. SonarQube cache quality, it's a, maybe not everybody knows it. It's a syntax analyzer tool for ObjectScript. It's very good to have such kind of tool. If you go working with JavaScript, TypeScript, Java, or any other modern language, they already have such tools, linters, syntax analyzers. So for ObjectScript, we also have such tool. It's also good to check your code with such tools. ZPM also can be used here. ZPM supports tests, unit tests as well. So if your package, if you have package for ZPM, you can test it in this stage as well. Release, release is just a part of DevOps cycle, but I just copied it from builds because here actually much more different tools which not suit for ObjectScript, for InterSystems. Releases is just make release, publish somewhere, but we don't publish it now yet. We just can push our release to FTP or somewhere. So don't care so much here. Deploy. Yes. We then after builds, after tests, we can deploy it with CI/CD, of course. It's a cycle there. So it could be just Docker, Kubernetes, on somewhere on your own cluster, anywhere, or maybe Ansible Chief, which also can help you to deploy your application. So that's it. We have bunch of tools. You can choose tools for your company. Some tools just goes through all cycle, and you can use it everywhere. Like GitLab through all cycle goes, or but such tools like task managers, Asana, or Jira, Track can be used in any place as well, because you need some notifications about if your tests failed or not, build was successful or not, and so on. So it can be used everywhere. Yeah. If you use right tools, you will get better tested, well-tested code, more readable. So you just don't care about issues, you just focus on new features, make faster. And if you don't care about it, with good editor, you can code faster. Just code. And time from task to release. Just fast. Thank you. Any questions?
Dmitry, thank you very much. What I like about your presentation that you introduced the logo for ZPM. Right? Thank you. Yeah. Any questions to Dmitry? And my question first. You mentioned so many logotypes. So do you have experience on everything of that? Really?
I know almost everything, all of these tools. Yeah.
That's very impressive. So
yeah, if think about, I didn't write Jira actually. I don't know why, but Trello, Track, Asana, Flow, Docs, Slack. No, Microsoft Teams, because GitLab, GitHub, these tools Git, GitLab. No P4s. IPv4s inserted just for InterSystems.
Thank you.
Subversion
Thank you, Dmitry.
was, many tools.
Okay, any questions to Dmitry?
Yeah.
Please, yes. Put it in memory, yeah. Kura, do you have question? No?
One question is about security when you do the development, you know? Closer. Hola?
Yep.
Yeah, about the security. I mean, you know, when you are developing, you have some threats that could happen, like SQL injection and this type of things. It's more in the while you develop static code analysis or dynamic code analysis.
Yes. Like cache quality can check some issues with your code. Maybe it can find some issues.
Yeah, but not security. I mean, I am talking about always.
Security. It's actually scanning for security. It's a quite difficult task, and for ObjectScript, because currently we have such security scanning for JavaScript, for Java, for modern languages, but nobody cares about security in ObjectScript yet. Yeah. So we don't have yet any tools such. But if you will present, I will add it.
Maybe some code analysis could be.
Cool.
Yeah. So thank you, Dmitry, very much. And actually, I must say that Dmitry was our last presenter this wonderful evening, and it's a pity, but we are closing our presenting program. But what is great, we can continue our networking for some time here and maybe forever.